But great, so here is the objective for today. So we just did introductions, thank you. We are going to move into a quick grounding, which I think is a grounding not just for today, but hopefully for our time together on Saturday. We will do an overview of the day, and I will share a little bit, hopefully more specifics about volunteer roles. We'll review some space logistics. Handoffs are really sort of volunteer responsibilities, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So feel free to pop off mute if you don't hear me well enough, or you missed something, or you have questions in the meantime. So let's just dive in. I think one of the most important roles that I think collectively we all play in the photo ID clinics and the project more broadly, I think is really ensuring that people are treated with dignity and compassion and respect. I think if I asked you all to raise your hand if you've ever had a less than awesome experience at the DMV, we might all share that that is probably one of the places where dignity and respect or compassion, patience, understanding maybe are quick to go away and wouldn't be adjectives that I personally would use to describe really any experience I've had at the DMV. I've had some that are not like awful, but I think part of what we're looking at here and when we're showing up in these spaces is helpful to remember that for us, I think as people of faith and people of goodwill, we're coming together because of these values, and this is an opportunity for us to practice that. We get to meet people we don't know, who don't know us, who might not trust us, who might not look like us or sound like us or blah, blah, blah. And the point is, we don't mind, right? This is a space where we get to actually just practice love of neighbor. I think the other space here is that we are volunteers, which means we don't know everything, and we're not supposed to know everything. And we are not case workers and case managers, and we're not trying to do the easily available savioristic tendencies that I think many of us probably share, right? We want to do good, and we want to help, and we want to make it right and better for everyone. And our role here is pretty clear and defined of how we show up to one another and what this very tiny piece of a broader community effort to change the way we live looks like. So we're going to try to build some trust, and it is going to be different for different people and in different ways. I think then ultimately, sort of thinking more broadly about this project, I think there's a lot of reasons why this is happening right now. And I think one of those is about power and about who has it and who's afraid that it's going to get taken away, and the actions then that they have taken to preserve that power. And I think I heard in Jefferson City a couple weeks ago, I was there for a statewide conference, and the Reverend Dr. Vernon Howard from Kansas City spoke and gave a big presentation about the Black freedom struggle in the United States, and spoke about what these eras and phases and cycles have been where Black people get to live as whole people in this country, and what that has looked like, and how those of us who are in the white majority have acted against that, those very values that I think many of us profess outside of those spaces. So when I think about all that, processing paperwork, if you will, is kind of like, what? Like, we just have to get this done, right? And I think it's helpful for me, at least, to stay grounded in the fact that we're doing this because some people in our community are being told they don't matter, they don't belong, they don't get to vote, they aren't worthy of voting, aren't worthy of being treated with dignity and compassion. And we get to stand in this space and say, right? That's not how we want to live. That's not the kind of community we want to be a part of. So that's a big picture thing. And this is like one tiny piece within that. But for me, that feels really important. I think the other piece is that when people spend time with us in clinics, we might not have answers. We will not have answers to everything. But man, I would feel so great if people left going like, dang, those people are really nice. And wow, I know more now than I did when I walked through these doors this morning. I know about how the laws have changed. I know about how that's going to impact me. And now I know something about what I might need to do to exercise my own rights and my own freedom in this country. Questions? Okay, great. So a day overview. The clinic this Saturday, clinic hours are from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's what has been publicized alongside the resource fair that's being offered by the hub. As you'll notice, volunteer shifts are from 9 to 3 because I add on an hour before and an hour after, as Bill can attest from his experience last week, or last time, 2 weeks ago, that there's some setup and some takedown, and it would be really nice if I didn't have to do that myself. So if you are a 9 to 11 a.m. volunteer, please don't break your neck to try to get there at 9 a.m. If you can be there between 9 and 9:30, I would appreciate it. And then certainly in the later afternoon, if the crowds aren't, if there aren't tons of people, I'm not trying to have everyone stay there and twiddle their thumbs. So we'll send people home, we'll start packing up, whatever we need to do. Ideally, we will have 12 volunteers per shift. And we're gonna go through that, and like you'll see why and where and how. I can tell you right now, I don't have 12 volunteers signed up every shift of the day. I think that's okay. Some of you who are with us on the 25th will remember that if everyone arrives at one time, 12 volunteers at once isn't going to be enough, and we will do our best to scramble and accommodate and shift roles as we need, and also invite folks to hang out and wait, to go visit the resource fair and come back in, things like that. We could also be in a situation, I'm thinking, if it's pouring down rain on Saturday, maybe not too many people are going to show up, and then we will do our best to go with the flow and adjust accordingly. I will provide a light lunch for volunteers who will be present about noon. So we'll have some sandwiches and chips and stuff from Jimmy John's. I'll have vegetarian and meat options. And I don't have a gluten-free option yet. So if you're gluten-free, let me know and I can figure that out. Otherwise, we'll have some snacks there. Unlike the 25th, we are not providing refreshments and snacks for everyone, again, because there's a resource fair happening and there are other opportunities for folks to hydrate and whatever outside of our space and presence there.
The resource fair, tell us more about that.
So this, the reason this date was selected was because the hub is having what they call a resource fair on the same date at the same time. So they had scheduled this resource fair in July, which was supposed to be before kids went back to school. They hand out backpacks and school supplies. They have community organizations table. They are going to have like a DJ, I think, and a bounce house or something like that, some activities. So it's sort of like a community day. And in fact, we scheduled it so that perhaps people who are already going to be making a trip to this location or would know that this was happening could also be here and have some services around photo ID and birth certificates. So
Sarah, I have a question. My original assignment was 12 to 2. So where in that process do I show up in these volunteer shifts? I have food pantry till 11. So I was going to be able to get there by 12 to 2. But I mean, is that messing things up or?
I will take you whenever you can get there. So let me look at the schedule and touch base with you after this, if that works for you.
Yeah, because it originally was set up. It was originally set up 10 to 12 and then 12 to 2. So that's why I signed up for the 12 to 2.
Okay, I will look into it and circle back to you after this, if that's okay.
Yeah, fine.
The other thing, so theoretically, the resource fair is supposed to happen outside, and we're supposed to be kind of the only thing that's happening inside. And we don't control the weather still can't control the weather. And there's last I checked, someone correct me if you've seen something else. It might rain on Saturday, which likely means that the hub is going to move their resource fair or as much of they can of it inside. So they've already moved where we're going to be to a different place within the hub to accommodate for having to move the whole resource fair inside. So we're going to go through that, but just flagging that there might be some last minute scrambling if the hub is readjusting and it's pouring down rain and people are coming in and out. So we're gonna do our best to just go with the flow and support what's happening. There will be a separate, sort of adjacent to the room that we are in is a kitchen that they use as a food pantry. So we'll have our lunch and stuff in there because I don't think the pantry will be open on Saturday. Okay, big picture.
Sorry, Sarah, it'll be obvious that where to go once we get it to the hub.
Yes, and I'm going to give you some more details about that as soon as we get into the space logistics.
Okay, thanks.
So big overview of the day. People are going to find their way to our intake table. And then there's going to be an intake process. We're going to go through, I'm staying top level, and then we're going deeper. Intake process, if a lot of people come at once, there's going to be a waiting area. Once they've gone through a brief intake, then they or are waiting, then they'll move to an application support station. They'll work one-on-one with a volunteer to go through the document process. And again, I'm going to go into these details a little more. Then there's the financial support station, which is where you can come get the checks, the bus tickets, if you need to process something online for online payment, the money station, that would be me. Then there's a station where where there's copying and scanning on a new printer that is much faster than the last situation we had. And so there'll be separate instructions about that, but it's its own standalone thing that you can do. Then when you're sort of like done, that's sort of the last thing you do in the application support process. Guests who have not registered to vote and are interested you can take them over to the voter registration station, and then checkout is the same place as intake. And so there'll be a full closed loop, and I'm going to tell you why. So volunteer tools, there's several things that depending on your role, you might use differently or see or not see. So I'm going to go through those very quickly. We have volunteer binders, and they have tabs, and they have lots of resources and materials. They should have at an application support station. Each application support station has a binder, and this should have everything that you need to support the individual that you're working with. Related to this, at check-in, everyone will get this new yellow sheet that looks, in case those of you were here the last time, looks very similar to the application support checklist, because it is, and it's modified. So I'm going to get into that process in a second. So we have the binder, which has all the resources. It has the flow charts. It has the applications. It has the documents and things you'll need. It has the next step sheets that you'll need. So that's all in the binder. 4 out of 5 stations will have laptops. The 5th station is a St. Louis only sort of station where the individual is going to plan to go in person or mail in, but only in Missouri, in which case there's usually not a need for a laptop. And so we will have a backup if we need to, if that person needs to print something or whatever, we'll work on it. But we are just setting up 4 with a laptop and 1 without. We're going to see how that goes. And then we have totes with general supplies, Rubbermaid totes with paper clips and pens and pencils and all that sort of stuff. The application support checklist, which is now this yellow sheet, so it's the new version of the application support checklist, is replacing what we tried to do online last time. So some of the volunteers who were with us know that there was an intake form that was digital at check-in, and then there was a separate form that application support volunteers were filling out as they went and answering questions, and I thought that was helpful. I think it's maybe less helpful. We had some tech issues to close that loop. So now we're going old school. Old school, best school is how I tell my son when I say things and he's like, what? And I'm like, just, it's fine. So old school, we're doing pen and paper. Here's what this looks like. The very top of this page, so I have it kind of blown up in chunks on the screen so that you can see it. The very top of this page is what happens at intake. It's in the box. So the intake volunteers are going to greet someone and they're going to ask some questions here. And part of the framing around these questions is about being able to say, well, starting again from that place of relationship and compassion and trust, right? Hi, I'm Sarah. Thank you so much for coming. What can I help you with today? Right? Like getting into that, like, modeling the kind of way that you want to be treated as well in the same time. I think the other piece here is there's some questions around date of birth, zip code, pronouns, and racial and ethnic identity. I think that some of you remember from last time that these are not mandatory things that folks need to answer. The reason that we want to ask these questions is because this clinic is part of a both and sort of solution to what the Missouri legislature has placed in our laps. While the laws are being challenged in court, we are offering these clinics to help folks have as great access as they can. But gathering this kind of information helps and informs our advocacy efforts moving forward so that we can change these laws to make them better. That's why we'll ask date of birth is how we can understand the age, the zip code, pronouns, and identities of folks who are being most impacted by this, right? If they are not comfortable sharing, if they don't want to share, it doesn't matter. You can skip it and leave it blank. The last I would say is for pronouns and racial and ethnic identity. I've been in spaces where it has been suggested to me that the most equitable way of approaching that is not giving options. So instead of saying, do you use she, her pronouns, or do you use he, him pronouns? You say, what pronouns do you feel most comfortable with? Or what pronouns do you prefer I use? Or
Yes,
I would say,
when we said that, we got, what do you mean? What? And then they started laughing. And then the one young man we were with first said, well, I think you can call me Mister.
so, and I think that those are still spaces, and I will even take it one step further since I spent the last 15 years in immigration work. Pronouns are a wildly also different space in Spanish, and it's still new, right? My parents still don't understand. You got to do what? I have to do what pronoun, right? Like my dad doesn't even know what pronouns are, much to my mom's chagrin. The point is, I think we start to model it, and you say, I use she, her pronouns. What do you use? And if they don't know, then you can say some people would identify as male or female, some people don't. So this is just an opportunity for me to know how you like to identify so I can respect you. I think, again, it's one of those spaces that some people are going to take it seriously. Some people are going to laugh and be like, why are we doing this? I'm clearly a dude or whatever. Then move on, right? That's okay too.
That's the way we felt. So
Yep. Yep. Same thing. Like I would, as a white woman, not ask someone who appears, or as I would say, like, oh, you're a person of color. I'm not gonna say, do you identify as Black? I would say, like, how do you describe your racial or ethnic identity? Again, this is a long conversation about something that's very small and very fast, but I think it's important of how intentional we are in building that kind of trust with the community that we engage.
Clarify, this block here that you're showing, is that going to be filled out by the intake desk?
Yes,
So if you're at the application desk, it'll already be filled out then?
correct.
Okay.
So
and
at
then they
intake,
will bring that with them.
the intake staff is gonna help fill this out. They will give it to the person and help them sit down or take them to an application station. And the intake will help them understand that they need to give this to the volunteers at the application station.
Okay.
Okay, this will get turned in. I see you, Miriam. This will get turned in at checkout, and that will help us close the loop. Go ahead, Miriam.
Well, in some ways, I find these questions kind of personal to ask people, but the other question is, if they say I'm Mexican, is that a racial and ethnic identity acceptable on this list? Okay.
Yep. That's a whole other thing of, is Mexican or Hispanic or Latino a race or an ethnic? Exactly. Miriam, that's the other reason why I find it helpful to preface this by saying, I'd like to ask you some questions because we're also trying to gather data to inform our advocacy efforts. You don't have to answer any of them if you're not comfortable doing so. And that way you can, read the room. And if you're talking to someone who's not into it, move on.
Okay.
Sarah, what's the minimum information you need? Like, I assume they're going to be doing ID, so they could probably feel comfortable giving birth date, but do they need like name and birth date, zip
Name
code,
and
or
phone number.
name and phone number? Okay.
Yep. And that's helpful. I will make asterisks there on my form so that folks know. Great. Okay, then the person gets to, I forgot. This is the part that's filled out at the intake station. Okay. Then when they get to the application station, the volunteer will write their name. Sorry, you can see it better on this slide. Right here where it says volunteer name. The volunteer, when they sit down with you, you write your name there because you're going to look for this sheet. So if you're in the application support station, you're gonna be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, do you have that yellow sheet? You start with that, put your name there, and then you as the application support volunteer work through the rest of this list.
At the last workshop, we had 2 people at each application station. Is that the staffing is be 2 volunteers or just 1?
No, we had 2 people when we had an insurgence of a surge of volunteers that were unexpected.
Okay.
So the baseline will be 1 volunteer and 1 guest. If we have enough volunteers to duplicate or to double up, we will. I did have 3 volunteers from the morning shift cancel already, 2 because they tested positive and 1 because she had a grandbaby and is traveling to go see the grandbaby. So that's great. We probably won't have enough to double up. Myself and Christine Dragonette from St. Francis will be there. And so we are hoping to be able to float much more than we were able to do it the last time.
How about the WashU kids?
They are not signed up this time. There are 2 students signed up and I don't think they're from the WashU group. So as you,
Sarah, I know that there is a voter ID card that is free. The people don't have to pay money for. Which of those choices on the intake sheet, if someone just wants an ID to vote, nothing more, which one of those things are they looking for? And they're supposed to be free.
great questions, emphasis on supposed to. So the photo ID, a Missouri non-driver, non-real photo ID is the same thing as the free ID to vote. So if they're coming for a photo ID, that's the only thing that we're able to help them with, regardless if they're going to qualify for the free ID or if we're going to help pay for it or not. So the only ID is that one. Last time we had someone come in and say, well, I really want a driver's license. And I said, no problem. We can pay the amount of the photo ID, which I think is, I think it's $18 to like $22. I don't quite remember what the driver's license amount is, but I said, we'll pay that amount towards it. And then you pay the rest. And she was happy. Those processes, as long as it's non-real, are the same. So even if they want the free ID to vote, they're going to go through the same process as the not free ID to vote. It's the same thing. The only difference is payment.
Okay.
So at check-in, it's either a Missouri birth certificate for yourself or someone else. So I know some of you remember that individuals came in asking for birth certificates for children. In this other line is where you would write like daughter, son, what, something like that. Give me some information here. OOS, out of state birth certificate for self or for someone else. Missouri photo ID for yourself or someone else. And then I have on here registered to vote. And similarly to how we asked last time, oh, I'm already registered. You would mark that here. I'm not sure. I don't care. You can mark that here. If they're coming for something totally else different, there's an option for that. And then you would want to be like, great, let me go talk to Sarah and figure out if there's something that we can help with.
So Missouri photo ID self is supposed to be free.
It is sometimes free. It is not free for everyone.
Huh. But how about everybody who wants, if they only wanted to vote?
They are sometimes free, not for everyone.
Okay.
So I can go into that for sure.
Okay, we can do
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Do we need that approval certification to register people to vote?
None of us in this room will be registering people to vote at the clinic. We have people from the League of Women's Voters who are doing that, and they are making their own decisions, which I'm happy to share my opinions on about later of how I would do it. But I've been in lots of conversations about that, but none of us are registering people to vote. The league is doing. Rochelle, did you have a question?
Well, the training I went to about the new law with Denise Lieberman, she was very broadly defining what soliciting
Yep.
someone to register to vote could be, and even this would possibly come under her definition, I'm thinking. If
So-
you're bringing up the issue and saying, so are you going to register to vote? Encouraging it,
Yep, so I've talked to
Potentially-
Denise, oh, sorry.
potentially it's soliciting people to vote. It's all crazy.
Yeah.
But
For sure. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. I've also been in lots of those conversations with Denise and adjacent to her. So we, as our volunteers in this intake section, we're asking questions for the individual to self-report, and none of us are doing the registration. And so
I
there's
understand.
not a way that we would be involved in soliciting, because this is just
I see.
asking questions. There's another
Okay.
space and another table that's intentionally part of why we're doing it, so that if they're registering, that's happening not here. This is like a survey, if you will. Okay, so basically then the application support volunteers walk through the rest of this checklist. It's the same thing as it was before. You'll start with the community agreement form. You'll go through the flow charts. This is all in the binder. So I'm gonna breeze through this part. And if we wanna circle back to some of these more details at the end, we can, but I wanna make sure we get through sort of the overall processes and things. But you'll follow this checklist with your binder, working through all of the process to help them gather their documents, complete the applications, get the financial support. You will write on here what financial support is given. If you come to me and you get a check or 2 checks, you're going to write all that here, the check number and the amount number here. If we need to make an online payment, we'll make a note of that here. If you give out bus fares, we're going to write a total number here. So everything gets tracked on this sheet. If for some reason a mom is applying for 5 kids and you have to write 5 checks, just write them on the piece of paper somewhere so that I have some record of it. Okay.
So Sarah, we had mother and her son come. They both had their own stuff, but will they each have one of these sheets, or will there be one for both of them?
I would say I'm going to leave that for the intake volunteers to see what makes most sense. If a mom is applying for her minor kid's birth certificate and her own, let's put them all in one.
Yeah,
If kind of both adults and we can send them to 2 different volunteers to do their things, treat them as 2.
okay. Well, they came together, but I think he was 18.
Yeah, I would say whatever you think is best. I would say if you're not sure, give me some more information and put it on 2 sheets.
Okay.
The last sort of steps are, as you're working through the application support, are those next steps pages. And so you're going to fill those out, which then go home with the individual so that they know, here's what's happening next. Here's what I have to take. Here's where I'm taking it. That's their record of, oh yeah, I met with Anne and she said, I'm going to do all of these things at these places at this time. You're going to give it to them all written down so they don't have to try to remember it. After you do all of that, you go to the print station. You're going to scan a copy for our record so that if something gets lost, we have a record of it and we can help sort of come up with copies of things. And then you're gonna make a complete copy, which goes with the guest, so that if they have to turn things in, they retain a whole copy of everything that they did with us, right? Including, if she's saying, well, I have this bill and here's my license and I'm gonna take those things and blah, blah, blah. We'll make a copy of those so that they have a whole packet of everything, right? When in doubt, have more information, have a paper trail. So that's what we're trying to do.
Will our volunteers be operating the machines and copies, or are we going to have somebody at the desk that you hand it to?
The application support volunteers should be prepared to do that. I'll have instructions on the printer machine. I'm also going to be sitting right there. So if we need help, I can do that. If we have float volunteers like extra, which we will at some points, a float volunteer will get pulled into, that would be a space that a float volunteer would help too. So I'm not dedicating at this point a whole volunteer for that. And we have a new machine and I just programmed it today. So it's literally 2 buttons. So I think it should be easy. And I'll have it all written out and we'll be there and we'll improve it next time. Okay. I am adding one more thing in the information that we give them, and that'll probably be at checkout, which is the 1878 one pager. The Missouri Voter Protection Coalition just made a nice one pager of here's what we're challenging about HB 1878. I'm going to print those off, and we're equipping people with that information so that they know here's how the law changed. Here's how it might impact me. So I'm going to add that to the mix too, just so that they have some more information. After you give everything, you give it to them, and then you'll take the guest either to the voter registration table or to checkout, which is the intake station. Okay. So you've kind of now seen the whole day. There's basically these 6 roles that volunteers play. If you're at the intake station, you're really doing check-in, check-out, and sometimes, depending on the crowd, a little crowd control guiding of, if there's a backlog of people, who goes in next? Great, someone came out, I'm gonna need to help someone go in. So, it's that weird space where we're still trying to figure out, are we gonna have 30 people all at once? Or are we gonna have 1 people the whole day? Like, we're gonna figure that out. So we might have 3 intake volunteers. We might have 1 at a given moment. So we're gonna see how it goes. Application support, those are folks that are sitting at the tables, working through everything with an individual. Float volunteers can help with printing, can help with crowd control if we need to, can maybe even support with like, oh, I have a question or an issue, I don't know how to do this, or I need an extra copy of this, can you grab that for me? Those sorts of things. Float volunteers are ready to be flexible and thrown in and utilized where we need them. I also don't have childcare volunteers scheduled for this time. We debated whether or not we should pay to have childcare there, but ultimately decided that if there are children there today or on Saturday, it's likely that they're there as a whole family for the resource fair, in which case we think there might be some additional hands to help. If not, kids are gonna sit at the table and we'll get out some crayons and colored pencils and hope that they can sit down and handle it, right? We have some notary volunteers coming from Share Emeth. Notaries are mostly only utilized for mail-in applications or out-of-state birth certificate applications. So I am hoping that I will have someone there, at least 1 person there the whole day. If not, we're going to troubleshoot when and how we can help notaries happen as we go. Then, like I mentioned, I'll be there as Ashray staff, and Christine will be there from College Church, St. Francis Xavier, which is the SFX for those. Should have written that out all the way. But so we'll both be there. And I think that I have modified my role so that I will be able to help and guide more than I was able to last time. Okay, space logistics. Here's how it works. We're gonna go through where this place is located, how you get there, where to park. Big picture, we are in Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood. So we are where this red pin drop is, in the sort of middle of the screen where it says 3000 East Prairie Avenue. You're basically, the nearest intersection, I would say, is Grand and St. Louis Avenue. Okay, we're not at that, but that's closest. Another, what do you call it? Not mile marker. Landmark, thank you. Another landmark is the Boys and Girls Club that is right there also on Grand. We're going to zoom in a little bit so that I can tell you that if you're coming, for example, 40 or Forest Park Parkway, and you're on Grand and you're going north, heading north on Grand, you can't turn left lawfully onto South St. Louis Avenue. If you're going to violate that sign, you do you, but you can't turn left there because there's a no left turn sign. So you would need to keep going north. This is how I go. Keep going north on Grand. You can't turn left on Dodier, which is right where the Boys and Girls Club is, because it's blocked off because of Boys and Girls Club. Keep going straight until you get to the next actual first place that you can turn left, which is Sullivan Avenue. There's a chop suey restaurant right on the corner there. So if you turn left onto Sullivan Avenue, then you'll keep going, you'll be heading west, and you will go 2 blocks and turn left into really what's kind of a glorified alley called Hyman's Place. Hyams Place, so sorry. And so turn left there and you'll make a right into the parking lot, which is actually the back of the building. There's a big Mercy sign on the side of on the front and the back of the building because there's a Mercy clinic in the hub. So you can park in that parking lot, and there's a gray door kind of right in the middle of the building, and that's where you'll enter. It'll be unlocked. If you try to go in on one of the gray doors that's like closer to the side, it will be locked, and you will know that that's not where you're supposed to enter because the gray one will be open. You can also come if you're like coming from, sometimes if I go there from CRC, I wind my way through Del Mar and then find myself to St. Louis Avenue. You can come up Prairie Avenue and then go around the back too. But I just was offering this as suggestions here. I think it is easiest to park in the back. You can also park in the street, but I think the lot would probably be your best choice.
Where will the resource fair be held, the outdoor part?
I understand that the resource fair is going to be held along Prairie Avenue. So we'll see. Okay, we will within the building. So if you come in from Prairie Avenue or from the parking lot, both of those doors kind of face each other right in the middle of the building and put you into the lobby. So you walk in and there's a lobby right there. We will be in the conference room, which is, I think, also called the community room. So this is not where it was last time. So if you volunteered in August, you can take all of that out of your brain because we're on the other side of the building. So go the other way, go down the hall towards the Mercy Clinic. We're opposite the Mercy Clinic. And this is how it's going to look. In case you are a visual learner, here's my visual learning tools for you. If you don't like this sort of thing, close your eyes and go to the bathroom for a minute. So basically what you're looking at is the hallway along the bottom where the waiting area is. We'll have an intake table, ideally, in the hallway. If need be, again, if we have to adjust based on a million other factors that we can't control, we'll adjust, but this is how we're going to try to set it up. Intake and checkout in the hallway, waiting area in chairs in the hallway. And then we'll have 5 application stations set up in the middle of the room. The League of Women Voters will be doing voter registration, ideally on the right there inside the room. Then we'll have the admin table where I will be, as well as the print scan station next to me on the other side of the room. Okay.
So we will just ask them if they're there to also register to vote and show them where to go, correct?
Yeah, so in the intake form, it says, oh, are you here to
It'll be checked, okay.
you want to register to vote or not? And, or you can say like, do you know if you're registered to vote? And if they're interested, then you mark that on the yellow sheet, and the application station volunteer will take them to the League of Women Voters before they leave.
Okay. Yeah.
Rochelle, you got another one?
No, I'm just thinking, you just say, are you wanting to vote when register to vote while you're here or something like that? Yeah.
Is there any, what do you need to register to vote?
That's a good question. Miriam, do you want to answer that question?
Or could you ask that? I heard the end of the question, but I didn't hear the beginning.
What do you need to register to vote?
You need, there's a certain amount of information people have to have. They need to have their driver's license. They have to have their social security number. They have to have their address. They have to know that they don't have to show you proof, but they need to fill in that information on the form for voter registration. So they need their mailing address or their residence address. I'm not sure that we ask them to show us any ID. But they have to, on the form itself, there are a number of things they have to fill in, a phone number. They definitely have to have their social security number. It's very important. And driver's license, if they have a driver's license, or a photo ID, a license. This is the kind of catch 22 here.
Last time.
Anne also has done this. Maybe she can say whether I've left anything out here.
you do not have to have a valid driver's license to register, but you have to have one by the time you go to vote. So,
Right.
on that, yeah.
I know that last time the league had one of the volunteers brought like a tablet to help folks register because they can, sign their finger online and whatever. So again, I'm gonna try to encourage us to be a little hands-off, even if some of us are experienced or more experienced than others in that area. In this space, I think it's helpful to delineate those roles based on some of these new changes and legal challenges. So unless you have registered online with the Secretary of State as a solicitor, I would discourage you from registering people to vote while you're here on Saturday. But I know that last time they registered 4 people to vote, and I would guarantee you that none of those people had a photo ID when they were there to sign up.
So we can tell them to be sure they absolutely have to have a photo ID to vote.
Correct.
And
Not
alert
to
them.
register, but when they show up to the polls, they will need a photo ID. And that's part of the 1-pager that we'll give them too.
Well, I might say that I sent in my application for a voting solicitor, but it was before the 28th of August. So now I have to send in a new one, and I've never received anything back anyway.
Right.
So I feel very uncomfortable signing anyone up right now to register.
Yeah. That's why we'll have league voters there, league volunteers there. Rochelle, did you have another one?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I didn't get my confirmation and I called there and left a message and they sent me a confirmation. So on registering to register,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay, we're almost done here. Last slide. Couple volunteer responsibilities. When you arrive, I will have a printed sign-in sheet at the admin station. I can probably pull it up here in a minute. It has like the time slot and your name and a place for you to write the time that you got there and initial in or whatever. And it'll also have your role on it. So it should tell you if you're going to be at application station 1 or 2 or intake or whatever like that. This is not an attempt to micromanage. If the roles need to change, we're going to change those roles. But I wanted to have something that was like a suggestion for here's how we could organize ourselves, and then we'll change as needed. So definitely sign yourself in. If you haven't already, I will ask you to review and sign a confidentiality agreement as a volunteer. So those will be on the table too, with a more clearly labeled folder where you can put the completed waivers. If you signed a waiver last time, I don't need you to sign another one. We're going to try to just have one per person per year. If you're not sure, no harm in signing another one, but don't feel like you have to if you already did. On that note, the last thing I would say is in this space, I'm holding us to a pretty high degree of confidentiality. We are not here to interrogate our community members for our own self-interest, for our own benefit, for the cause, right? I think that's another space that can get messy in justice-driven spaces, right? We need to know all of these things so that I can prove this point and change the system. And at the end of the day, that's not my stuff to tell. So I'm going to ask you to maintain the same degree of privacy. Folks are going to be sharing private information, confidential directions, identifying social security numbers, all of that. When you as a person leave this space, you shouldn't have any of that recorded anywhere in any way. That should all stay at the clinic. If you feel so compelled to speak about your experience in the clinic, do it. That's how we can help make change. And that does not mean taking selfies with the person that you're helping and saying like, oh my God, I just helped Margaret and she was born in 1977 and she's always done blah, blah, blah. Unless Margaret's there going like, yeah, tag me, let's do this, let's write it together, don't do it. So if you're gonna tell the story, tell it in a way that honors the privacy and the trust that these individuals are placing in you while you're there. Do we need to have any further conversations about confidentiality? Questions, concerns? Okay, one other piece.
If we signed one last time, we don't need to sign again. Is that what that's saying? Yeah, thank you.
Correct. I've also, not in this space, but in other spaces, realized that some of us hold professional roles outside of your volunteer role. So if you are an attorney outside of this space and you want to have an additional relationship with someone that's there, I would ask you to do that relationship separately than here. You are not an attorney when you're here. You're the intake volunteer or the application support specialist volunteer. So just as an example, if you need to do something else, do it somewhere else so that we can really make sure that we're building the right kind of trust in this space. Obviously, we've talked about dignity, respect, and compassion. Enough said there. I'm a broken record, but it feels something that's like so easy to do that is also easy to forget about doing intentionally if there's a lot of people at one time. So let's just really stay grounded in that. Handoff. So if you're the 9 to 11 volunteer and someone shows up at 11 or 10:50 to take over your spot, I'm gonna ask that the two of you do that handoff together rather than say, I'm here, who do I need to go to? Where do I go? What do I do? I'm gonna ask that before you leave, if there's someone that's replacing you, you hand off to them. Generally, I think it's best to do that not in the middle of an application with someone if it can be avoided. If you have a hard stop, you have a hard stop and we'll do what we can do. But help explain, go over, review, whatever you need to do so that the new volunteer is ready to jump right in, okay? Before you leave, I'm gonna ask you to sign yourself out. Part of this is also just helping me gather data about how long people are actually staying. If you said like, oh, I signed up for 2 hours and then I suckered you into staying for 5 hours, like I wanna know that so that I can know how many hours we're requiring to do this project more importantly. After the event, I will send a couple things online, a volunteer feedback form. If you filled one out last time and you don't have anything to add or change or say differently, you don't have to send out another one. You don't have to fill out another one. I will take all the feedback I can get because we're still modifying and growing and developing this whole project. So I will send you that. And I will send you a link for an office hours poll. So I know some of you have heard me talk about it or seen my emails, but we are trying to create, we're going to sustain a monthly clinic model. So we'll have 1 day a month where folks can walk in and get support. And we are also going to start having some day or time slot during the week that folks can make appointments to come in and get the same kind of support, just not in the clinic setting. I would like that not just to be me in my office, but rather have volunteers there. And I'm working with you and supporting you to keep doing this. So I have a survey so you can tell me what times and dates, generally speaking, work best for you. If every single one of these incredible 60 volunteers who are committed to this project tell me Monday from 3 to 5 is awful, I am not going to pick Monday from 3 to 5 because I know it is a low likelihood that anyone will sign up. But if several of you say, yeah, Wednesdays, Thursdays, blah, 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 we're going to give it a go. And I will send out then like a actual sign up time. So this is just a survey, a poll, not a commitment to say like, yes, I will be there at this time at that date. Does that make sense? Great. Okay, this is the end. Let me stop sharing so we can see each other. Let me remove my goofy spotlight. Okay. Questions, concerns, comments, cuss words.
I have a couple of questions. If someone comes in and says they're unhoused, do we immediately stop and get either you or Chris from?
You can, but the question is about whether or not when someone is unhoused, what's the best way to do that? Generally, you're going to go through the same process, the same flow chart, and then depending on what document they are requesting, they'll need an additional unhoused certificate, which at some point I have to sign. So if you feel better about bringing one of us in from the beginning, great, and we'll kind of lay it out and coach through that space. If you're like, oh, well, it's going to be the same, and we're going to add some other things to it, I'm going to give it a go, and then it's in the flow charts for what other things have to happen or what happens differently if they're unhoused.
And the other question has to do with the fact that we're giving them a check to pay for their real photo ID when they get to the Department of Motor Vehicles. But Aren't there certain circumstances where they can get the photo ID for free?
Correct.
And you have to say the magic words. That's my understanding when you show up there. Would that save us some money then in terms of not having to write the check?
Correct. So not everyone is eligible for a free ID to vote. You are qualified for a free ID to vote if you have never gotten one in the past. If you've gotten it once, you're done.
Once a lifetime.
Once in a lifetime opportunity. Thanks, Secretary of State. Okay, once per lifetime. You can probably qualify if you are at least 18 years old. If you are not currently on probation or parole. Also, you don't have to remember this. It's in your binder. There's a whole form for it. If you do not have any felony convictions related to voting, you can have a felony conviction if it's not about voting. But if it's about voting, which also like no one has felony convictions about voting in Missouri, this is another story. But if you do, then you're not eligible for it. And if you have never received one before. All the documentation is the same. And all the like requirements of what you have to show when you get to the DMV is the same. And then when you get there, you have to say, I need my free ID to vote. Now, the issue is that we have heard that not all DMV offices and representatives know about this program, know that it exists or that it's legit, and knows that the Secretary of State says that you have to pay for it. I don't know, and no one that I've talked to, including Denise, like we don't have any reason to believe that the Secretary of State since August 28th or since the passage of 1878 has sent any communication to the DOR or to any local office anywhere in the state of Missouri to say, oh, all of this stuff changed. And by the way, we're going to help people get their free IDs to vote. So here's how to do it. And here's what you need to know. So there's some degree of, I don't want to say risk, but there is a chance that an individual would go to a DMV, would be eligible for a free ID to vote, would have all their paperwork and get in there and be told that they don't qualify or that they can't have it or that this office doesn't participate in it. We can all sit here and say, but that's wrong. And that's true. And I generally err on the side of if someone is way uneasy about that, I would rather give them $15, $18 to go and make good use of that time than to go get turned away, come back, find me, get the check again, and then go again, or somehow do an advocation to somehow advocate for it. That being said, I know last time when we go through this and someone goes, yeah, I'm all of those things, I get it for free, then we give them this form to help them self-advocate when they're in the DMV. And several people did that. Several people took this and used the free ID to vote plan or path of action. The other thing that I will say about this is that since Sunday, when the law went into effect on the 28th, the Secretary of State has taken down the Show It to Vote program information from their website. If you go to Show It to Vote, like sos.mo.gov/show it to vote used to be, that's what's on my form because that's where the website was that explained the program and what to do and how to access it. It redirects you to a voter ID page. And at the very bottom of the page, it says, oh yeah, also you might qualify for a free ID to vote. And also we might be able to help you get the documents that you need so you can fill out this online form to start that process. So it's a little bit unclear to me, to Denise, to Christine, of like, are they actually like, where is this going? Are they changing it? Is it in the middle of something? We have theoretically, this flyer is still true. If you meet these guidelines, you can walk in and get your free ID to vote. You still have to have all of the documentation for a non-real, non-driver photo ID, which is also in the binder. You still have to go through everything. And if the individual says, yeah, I qualify, great. We don't need to write them a check. They can go. I think there were like one woman that I know from last time who was like, are you kidding me? I'm going to schlep my 3 kids to the DMV on the bus so that I can get this. And they might be able to turn me away right there. Like, is that really my only option? And I said, here's a check, go get it done. And she was like so thrilled. So that is in fact the middle gray area of like should and might and like what. So I think it's a case by case. I think we definitely encourage folks who are eligible to get the free ID to vote, because that is the state's obligation under current law. The other thing I would say is there are, if you are unhoused, you also don't have to pay for your birth certificate. There's a separate form for that. So, sorry, Department of Revenue. There's a fee exemption if you, for a certified copy of a birth certificate, if you meet the broad definition of being unhoused, or, sorry, they say homeless or unaccompanied youth. So that's also part of saving costs or the government paying for things that they should pay for. I'm just gonna say that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Other questions, concerns?
You said that there was, if you have never applied or had an ID, you can get one free. Does that mean if you've never had a driver's license at all in Missouri, for Missouri, or?
We have asked that question. I have been in spaces where that question has been asked on 3 different occasions to 3 different representatives of the Secretary of State, including he himself. The answer that has been given is that if you haven't received the free ID to vote, then you're eligible to. So if I've already paid for my driver's license once and I want to go in and get my free ID to vote, I am entitled to do that. We've also, I think the underlying concern is, will that be honored at the point of exchange?
Yeah. Okay.
So it should only be if you have received a free ID in the past, you are not eligible. If you've received paid for or not paid for any other kind of ID in the past, you are still eligible to get one free ID in your lifetime.
Is there documentation somebody could go online and say to some, you know, the people who deal with these are not really up to date. They're confused too.
So that's what this next step page that I created is for. It says, like, I designed it so that if someone gets pushback, they can give it to them and say, no, but right here, you can go to this website or call this number. This is a Secretary of State program that also requires a degree of self-advocacy that we hope we are helping equip. And I would also understand at times that that might not be a solution that is available to everyone.
Thank you.
There's not an official flyer. Clearly, the DMV offices aren't making huge banners and posting about it. And they're not sending mailings to everyone that they qualify for a free ID to vote, nor are they sending mailings that the law changed and now we all have to have photo IDs to vote. But that's why I created the flyer, so that someone had something in hand to say, nuh-uh, like, see,
Yeah.
you can go here, you can call here. So
Well, they're not government agencies. They're private contractors.
yes, ma'am.
So I'm sorry, I have to go because I have a
Okay.
colloquium on campus. So thank you so
Thank you.
much. It's nice to see everybody too. Thank
We'll
you.
see you Saturday.
Yep, for sure. 9 o'clock, I got it, my notice. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Any other questions?
No,
I was
Okay,
just gonna tell you, in the city, we have our special election coming up for
yeah,
the head of our whatchamacallits. And they did put on the back, there's a little bit new election laws, so giving us.
I saw
just-
that.
Yeah.
I did. I actually texted it. I snapped a picture and texted it to Denise and was like, did you see this? Too bad the Secretary of State won't do it.
I know.
It's fine. All right. Anything else?
Hey.
Okay.
Saturday.
I will send you, I'm gonna send everyone who's volunteering on Saturday a recording of this. I will also send my cell phone number so that you have that in case you need me. If there's any issues, you can call or text at any time. And otherwise, I'll see you on Saturday.
Okay.
Wear
Thank
comfy
you.
clothes. We didn't talk about dress code, but just like wear comfy clothes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.